2, I take it in English as maybe. We get some connections with people in Yugoslavia. Part 1 was about my father, Karl-Erik Selja, and here is me, Magnus Selja, my son, and his mother, Shirin. My mother, Eva Mona Lisa, and her last name is Hagströms because she grows up with not her biological parents. She grows up with in a family, I think. My understanding was that Mona, she was born in Åmål. Reason for that was that Hilma Charlotta Elisabeth Sjöstrand, she met Momcilo Petrovic. And Momcilo Petrovic, he is from Yugoslavia. And I don't really know, but for some reason he was in Västerås. I have some letters from him, and when I read the letters, I had got some stories from my mother, but when I read the letters, we have one from 1953. Then my mother, she was born 26, so she were 27 years old or something like that, and maybe she has met my father then or not. So this letter is from Momcilo, and he says, "Dear my child, through the Red Cross I have received your address, and now I write to you and hope you will receive my letter. My first wife died in April this year, but in autumn I married an opera singer from Vienna. I'm healthy and feel good and works in the government as an engineer. My two sisters and I are very interested to know more about you. Please write and send a photo. How is your mother? Please send me her address. Best regard, your dad, Momcilo." And interesting thing here is he wrote this in Swedish and also in German. Story says he worked, was an honorary consul. I have checked with the Swedish books, but I can't see he was that, so it's a little bit magic. Here we have another letter from 53, 22nd of November. I don't know if my mother answered. I think it was her English was not so good in the 1950s. She started studying when she in the 70s, and then she studied English and German, and also I think French. So here he says, it's nice to read your letter." So here we have an indication that she has been answering. "I'm so happy that it is in Swedish, someone that is in Sweden is in Sweden, someone that is so near and can bind me more to Sweden, my second home. It happened a lot in 27 years, and now I should tell you about me. In March 1924 came I to ASEA Västerås to get some practical training and learn the language. Then I learned to know Elisabeth, your mother, and love made its traces with all its consequences. And you as a result of this. In the beginning of August 26 was I forced to travel back to Yugoslavia to do my military service. I was then separated as a good friend to Elisabeth. When I came back to Belgrade military service after that, I married Milica, who died 12th April this year. In the beginning of 1927 was I titled to ASEA's representative in Yugoslavia and did a lot of business with Sweden. Soon before the war was starting in 1941 was I mentioned Swedish honorary consul in Yugoslavia. And then came the German innovation. So I haven't confirm this honorary consul. There is books from the Swedish the foreign department, but no, his name was never mentioned in it. And then we have a picture here which says Mein Schwester Mona von Bruder Vladan, and never heard that we had a I had heard the name Vladan, but I never understood that we have a brother. So I have tried to trace this a little bit more. So I emailed the attorney. There was an attorney when Momchil was died, and then it was a lot of complication. This opera singer, his second wife. The story we heard was that this opera singer also died, and then Momchilo maybe had some money, and the opera singer's mother, my mother told me, traveled to Sweden to destroy the birth certificate. So she came to Sweden and went to this expedition, asked for the paper, but they understood something is wrong, so she never got it. So the tragic feeling I have as a son is that my mother had a mother who never presented her for her parents, and the story my mother got was she was not fine, good, representative enough. She has a father who visits her once or twice, sends some money, is my understanding. And when he died, his wife's mother tried to erase the connection between my mother and father. So after learning this, I feel sad that no one saw my mother when she lived. How tough it must be to not be seen. And maybe also that's the reason that she was not tougher in the relationship with my father. My father was a really dominant person, and my mother was just taking care of him until when it was 92, 94, or 82, 84, when she left him. But they never divorced. He didn't want to divorce because then he had to split some money. So it's a sad story. It's a sad start in life that you have two parents who can't take care of you. So nice to learn a little bit more about her, and I'm interested to learn more why people did the way they did. So I helped my mother, I think in the 70s or 80s, to send some letter down to, maybe it was Vladan, to say that you can get what you can from this. And then from that time we haven't heard anything more. So the only thing I know about Momchil is what's on this page. If I look on the letter, I can see that he has the address where he lived is in this street. So maybe I will go down there and learn more. I've tried to get some more information from ASEA, ABB, as it's called today, but has got nothing more. So I have very, very, very little information about Momchilo. It was also this picture about his sisters, and I got help from a person from Belgrade, and he said maybe it's Danka and Jovanka. So his parents, I don't know anything about. Um, then we have the adoption papers, and in that it says that Elisabeth Sjöstrand, who I think I met down in Gothenburg when she was older, she worked at ASEA as a secretary. And Momcilo Petrovic worked at ASEA in Yugoslavia, and he paid 50 Swedish kronor, about $5 per month for Mona. And he did that. And she was adopted by Carl Gustav Hagström, who was a worker in ABB, and he was born in 1890, and the mother was Amanda Olivia Åsberg. They lived in I don't remember where they lived, but we have them here, and I don't think it was so. The problem for my mother was that Carl Gustav, has some political career, and the feeling I got, mother didn't tell so much, was that he did this to show that he was a good member. He has a good, what do you say, that he was a good member of the society. Also, there was some complication with some sexual stuff. I don't know, with him or with someone else. They had one son, and he was called Gustav Arne Hagström, and I think he was much older than mother. He was born 11 years older, and I don't understand how good relationship was. But he was some kind of, not playboy, but I think he was, yeah, I don't know. He came to New York. I have some non-confirmed things, 1941, and died in an air crash in 1948, which I think was it was just after the war, so lot of publicity. If you go back and look on Mona, then her mother Elisabeth, the story was that when she was born in Åmål, and the reason for that was that Elisabeth tried to hide that she had a daughter and tried to have a work, is the story I have heard, but didn't succeed. So Hagström raised her, and 20 years later they adopted her. She came to my mother and complained about the clothes and so on. So the story, my understanding is, she tried to have a high profile and never told. I have not heard, and my mother thought that she never told her parents that she had a daughter. So, and the story my mother had was that this Anton Rudolf Ludwig Johansson, and it was have a good work and so on. But what I heard from one of her sister's daughter, Britta Sonja Linnea Sjöstrand, was that this Elin, she died 1930, and she died in New TBC. I don't know if you told, is that the name in English? So when my mother was 4, she never met them. Anton Rudolf Ludwig Johansson was alone with the youngest daughter, and that's Britta Sonja Linnea Sjöstrand. She was just 8 years old. And the story I have heard was that she took care of this Anton Rudolf. He was uh, drinking a lot, and so there was a really tough time for her. And when he worked as in Gothenburg, and when Britta Sonja Linnea Sjöstrand was 18 years old, she escaped to Paris, or went to Paris, and there she married Erik Albert and moved to the States just to escape her father, which one of her daughter, Astrid Margareta Severin, told me was something tough for her in the rest of her life. But the sad thing is that Elisabeth never told about this Anton Rudolf. She has another sister, Elsa Viola, which I don't know much about, and then Sven Leopold. I think he was a seaman. Interesting is that Astrid is... I found Astrid through Facebook, and she has one brother, Sven Erik Severin, which I haven't met, but I will try to meet him. He is living here in Sweden, so he has moved from the States back to Sweden and has some children and don't live too far away from me. I had some email contact with him, but I haven't been follow up that, but I will try to do that later this year. And Astrid has more children, and is my understanding. So this is the story of Mona. If we look on the family tree, Hilma, Elisabeth here, as I said, married, not married, they got a child with Momchilo, and she didn't take care about Mona. Anton and Elin Ottilia came from Gothenburg. The interesting thing is that she had name Bildt, and that's the name that the foreign minister in Sweden has, but they are not from the same family. The foreign minister's family in the old days tried to told this family to change name because they wanted to have it themselves. Elin came from Gothenburg, and I have spoken to another genealogist, what you call it, who have looked a lot into this with this family, and it's from Skåne, the south of Sweden, and also Denmark. Rather interesting. So she has done a really, really good work, and we can follow from 1781 and even further back. And I think they lived on a really nice little island called Ven, which I haven't visited, but I will try to do. And on Ven, Tycho Brahe, a really famous Swedish person or Danish person, lived. So that's a interesting part of this history. But to summarize, I had a mother who only once or twice met her father, Momchilo, and I think we met him in Dubrovnik once, 1966, and also mother met him in Sweden. He's had a child with Elisabeth Sjöstrand, and she think never married again. My mother met her when she was younger and also when she was older. This is a picture up here from when she is really old. There is my mother, and here I think is Elisabeth. Really bitter old woman. she told my mother, which I can't understand that a mother can do, told her that it was her fault, that her life was was what it was like. So my mother, I think, feel she never complained, but she had a tough life with a father which was not there. Um, when I read the letters, I feel he liked to get in touch, but I don't know if it was too difficult for my mother to get in touch with a non-Swedish speaking person. Um, when he died, his wife tried to go up to Sweden to destroy her birth certificate. And then you have another mother, then you have a mother which never presented you for her parents. So I think my mother had a feeling that she was never accepted. She never complained, but now when I'm getting older, I feel that no one really saw her. And it was a complex life. She married my father rather, who was much younger. It was 6 year difference. So they married in 1954, and then they moved to Sweden. They had good economy, but I think my father was so spending so much time with his work and other interests, and didn't mother just supported him. So in 1984, they didn't they separated, but they didn't divorce. And the reason was, I think, my father found it was more better for his economy that they were still married. So my father were still married with my mother, but my mother didn't want to live with him. So 3 4 years later, he found another woman, Birgitte Larsson, who also supported him like my mother had done, and they moved to another house outside Gävle and lived there. And my father died in 2010. Um, he my father had a tough time because when he was young, he lost his legs, but he succeeded in a good way, I think, to make his life as working at a travel agency, and he was the boss, had 70 people. Um, I think working for him, and he was working with a travel agency when here is in the middle. He was working at the travel agency when life was easy. You didn't have internet, the tickets were expensive and so on. So he was also good, I think, a businessman, and did earn a lot of money on it, and also his way of managing people were successful. Um, he didn't have any education, but uh, tried to learn what was needed. But I think his success factor was that he had a easy to tell other people what to do. Um, and also that he had good support from Mona, my mother, and also then Birgit. This is taken 2010. Then he was still rather fit. The last 2 years, Birgit died, and he was very alone, I think. Um, he was not good of taking care of himself because he always had someone supporting him. So it was the last year was not the best in his life. I think the best in his life was when he had his travel agency, and he also was chairman, I think, of a bank in Sweden. And then he had a good life. He died 2012. Um, I think it was because he get weak in the end. So that's Karl-Erik, and who married Mona. I have in Swedish, I have spoken a lot about Karl-Erik's side, or mother's side, I think more. Valborg. And also a little bit about Karl Friede, who came from Västerås.